My name is Matt. I'm 34 years old. I am a dad, a back-end developer, and until last year I thought I had the kind of marriage most people envied. We were not flashy, just stable, quiet, bought Netflix nights, soccer games with our son, long coding sessions in the garage while she painted upstairs in her studio. My wife Lauren was an art teacher at the local elementary school. Empathetic, patient, the kind of woman strangers trusted in grocery stores and asked for directions. I had one rule in our marriage: no secrets. Looking back, that was cute. Because while I was recovering from a stress-induced collapse and trying to rebuild myself, Lauren was building something else. A version of me that never existed. A digital puppet that would say whatever she needed it to say. We lived in a modest 2-story house in suburban Portland. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Lauren had turned the upstairs spare room into her art studio, complete with easels and canvases covered in vibrant watercolors. I had claimed the garage as my workspace, setting up multiple monitors and a decent sound system for those late-night debugging sessions. Our son Jake was 6 years old, bright kid with an infectious laugh and an obsession with dinosaurs. He would spend hours building elaborate scenes with his toy figures, narrating epic battles between T-Rex and Triceratops. Lauren and I would take turns reading to him every night, and weekend mornings were sacred family time with pancakes and cartoons. I hit a wall after my second layoff in 3 years. The tech industry had been brutal. First layoff came when the startup I was working for ran out of funding. 18 months of job hunting later, I landed at a mid-sized company that seemed stable. Then the recession hit, and they cut half the engineering team, including me. Working 60 hours a week remotely, barely seeing my son, trying to pretend like we were not sinking financially. My blood pressure skyrocketed. I started missing details in code I would have caught blindfolded just months before. Simple bugs that should have been obvious became invisible to me. The stress manifested physically. Headaches that lasted for days. Insomnia that left me staring at the ceiling until 3 in the morning, mind racing with worst-case scenarios about our mortgage, our savings, our future. I lost 15 pounds in 2 months because I kept forgetting to eat. One night I passed out at my desk, just collapsed right onto my keyboard while reviewing a pull request. Lauren found me there at 2 in the morning, slumped over with my face pressed against the space bar. Lauren said she was worried. She offered to handle all the bills and house management while I focused on getting better. She took over the grocery shopping, the school pickups, even started managing our joint bank account. I thought she was saving us. Turns out she was systematically removing my fingerprints from our entire life. I got served divorce papers 3 days after my first therapy session. No warning. No discussion. Just cold delivery through a courier while I was playing Lego with our 6-year-old. Jake was building a spaceship, chattering excitedly about how it could travel to Mars. The doorbell rang, and I signed for what I thought was a package. The papers felt surreal in my hands, like someone had written a cruel joke with our names on legal letterhead. She filed for full custody, claiming emotional instability, outbursts, and verbal intimidation. I laughed when I read it, like an idiot. The claim seemed so absurd, so disconnected from reality. Jake looked up from his Lego creation and asked why I was reading papers that made me look sad. I told him it was just boring grown-up stuff, and helped him add more rocket boosters to his spaceship. Then came the emergency hearing 2 weeks later. She handed over audio files, voicemails, 3 of them, all in my voice. Crystal clear, unmistakably, me speaking into what sounded like my own phone. One said, "If you take my son from me, I will ruin your life. You do not know what I am capable of." I froze in that courtroom seat like I had just been stabbed in the spine. The voice was mine. The cadence, the slight rasp I get when I'm tired, even the way I pronounce certain words. But I had never said those words. Never even thought them. I never said that, I told the judge. But when they played the second message, where I supposedly threatened to burn her paintings and make sure our son sees what happens to traitors, the courtroom went dead silent. Even my own lawyer looked sideways at me. His expression shifted from confident to confused to something approaching alarm. I could see him mentally recalculating our chances, wondering if his client had been lying to him this whole time. The judge leaned forward. "We are suspending visitation until a full evaluation is complete." I could not breathe. I could not speak. I could not even stand up. My legs felt like they were made of water. The courtroom seemed to tilt sideways, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from sliding off my chair. Because the worst part was not that they believed it. The worst part was it actually sounded like me. Not just similar. Not close enough to fool someone who knew me casually. It sounded exactly like me, down to the slight pause I always take before saying certain words. Lauren sat across the aisle with her lawyer, dabbing at her eyes with tissues. She looked small and vulnerable in her navy blue dress, the picture of a frightened mother protecting her child from an unstable father. When our eyes met for a brief moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not fear. Not fear. Not sadness. Something closer to satisfaction. 3 weeks later, I was crashing on my brother's couch, eating canned soup for dinner, and Googling how to dispute fake audio evidence in court. Spoiler alert, it is legal hell. Most of the search results were about obvious voice manipulation, like robotic text-to-speech or poorly dubbed audio. But this was different. The voice in those recordings did not sound artificial. It sounded human. It sounded like me having the worst day of my life and saying things I would never say. Then I remembered something. My old 2017 MacBook Pro, the one I used before switching to my work-issued laptop when I started the job that eventually laid me off. I had not touched it in over a year. Lauren used to borrow it for lesson planning when her own laptop was acting up. Said she liked the keyboard better, that the keys had a better feel for typing. I dug it out of storage just to distract myself, maybe play some old games or look through photos from better times. What I found was not a lesson plan. It was a folder titled Vox_training. Inside were dozens of audio files, labeled, tracked, time-stamped, going back almost 8 months. My hand started shaking as I opened the first file. It was me reading what looked like random sentences. The brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. She sells seashells by the seashore. Complete pangrams and tongue twisters, the kind of phrases designed to capture every possible sound a human voice can make. There were voice clips of me reading long blocks of text. Say the sentence naturally, I will pick you up at 5. Repeat if you do this, I will be angry. Read this paragraph with emotion, you have betrayed everything I trusted you with. Dozens of these, with dates going back 6 months. All recorded during times when I thought I was helping her with school projects or reading scripts for what she claimed were educational videos for her students. I opened a Python script called synthesize_mat.py. Inside were calls to an open source AI voice model. Familiar structure. Same one I had used to demo text-to-speech technology to interns during my last job. The code was clean, well commented, professional and at the bottom of the script was a series of sentences she had typed by hand. If you take my son from me, I will ruin your life. You do not know what I am capable of. I will make sure our son sees what happens to traitors. Wadi. She had not just used AI to destroy me. She used my own tools to do it. The same open source libraries I had shown her during one of my coding sessions when she asked about my work and seemed genuinely interested in learning. There were training logs showing hundreds of iterations, refinement sessions, where she fed the model more of my voice data to improve accuracy. She had been methodical, patient, scientific in her approach to creating a perfect digital copy of my voice. I copied the folder to a secure drive and started scanning everything with the kind of forensic attention I usually reserved for debugging critical production systems. She had used an open source voice cloning library called Real-Time Voice Cloning. I recognized the repository from GitHub. Basic setup, decent quality for a free tool, but sloppy from a security standpoint. She left behind raw logs, checkpoint models, even the original WAV training files. I traced it all. The version of my voice she trained was built from recordings stolen from our old podcast project. The one we started during lockdown where we talked about parenting, technology, and life in general. We had uploaded maybe 6 episodes before losing interest, but those episodes contained hours of my voice speaking naturally about topics I cared about. Each generated threat message had creation timestamps, all dated weeks before she claimed I left them as voicemails. The metadata told a clear story. Audio generated on March 15th. Voicemail supposedly received on April 2nd. Audio generated on March 20th. Voicemail supposedly received on April 7th. She did not just lie about the timeline. She got the technical details wrong. She forgot that digital files keep receipts. That was her first mistake, but it would not be her last. I used audio forensic tools to analyze the fake voicemails. Software I had played with during college, back when I was interested in digital signal processing, before I switched focus to back-end development. The voice sounded like me, but it lacked the tiny inconsistencies that real human speech has. No breath gaps between sentences. No mouth clicks or lip sounds. The waveform was too clean, too perfect. Real human speech is messy, full of micro pauses and imperfections that we do not consciously notice, but that give voice its humanity. When slowed to 80% speed, the inflection glitched slightly. A subtle cadence skip between the words, ruin and your life, in the most damning recording. The AI had struggled with the emotional transition, creating a tiny but detectable artifact that no human throat could produce. I documented everything. Code structure analysis, metadata trails, audio frequency analysis, showing the telltale signs of artificial generation. I created a timeline proving the audio was generated weeks before the alleged incidents. Then I called someone who could make it official, someone whose opinion would carry weight in a courtroom. Her name was Dr. Nia Grant, MIT graduate with a PhD in digital signal processing, expert witness in 5 federal technology, fraud cases. I found her contact information on a forum for digital evidence disputes, where she had answered questions about voice synthesis detection. I sent her my evidence package through encrypted email, code samples, audio files, metadata logs, timeline analysis. Everything I had found. She reviewed it over a weekend and called me Monday morning. This is textbook manipulation, she said. Amateur AI synthesis, no biometric markers, log trails completely intact. Whoever did this was technically competent but legally naive. She sent me a formal report 46 pages long, with annotated graphs, spectral analysis overlays, forensic stamps, and detailed technical explanations that would be comprehensible to a judge. She even flagged the exact software version Lauren had used and cross-referenced it with known capabilities and limitations. If these files were presented as authentic voicemails in a court proceeding, that qualifies as perjury and digital evidence tampering under state law. Her final note said no one using this model could pass rigorous forensic review unless the judge was asleep. Dr. Grant also identified something I had missed. The training data included audio from video calls Lauren and I had during my job search when I was practicing for interviews. She had been collecting my voice samples for months, using every conversation as raw material for her project. Dr. Grant asked me to send her the original voicemails Lauren had submitted to the court. I filed a request through my lawyer and received them via court-authorized transfer. Chain of custody documentation, digital signatures, the whole formal process to ensure admissibility. I opened them with shaking hands, dreading what I would hear but knowing I needed to understand the full scope of what she had done. There it was, my cloned voice, saying I will ruin your life with a cold fury that made my skin crawl. It sounded like me on the worst day of my life, pushed beyond all rational limits. But I'd never felt that way, never spoken those words, never even conceived of making such threats. The file properties betrayed her again. The audio had been exported from Audacity, a free audio editing program. The same program I found installed on the MacBook in a folder labeled Voice Projects. She had not just generated the audio. She had edited it, added background noise to simulate phone call quality, adjusted timing and volume to make it sound like genuine voicemails. She had directed this performance like a movie director, crafting each line for maximum emotional impact. The pauses were too perfect, the emphasis too deliberate. She had made me sound like a movie villain delivering threats instead of a real person losing control. But real people do not deliver movie villain speeches when they are genuinely angry. They stumble over words, repeat themselves, trail off mid-sentence. The artificial perfection of the performance was actually evidence of its falseness. On a hunch, I checked the MacBook's time machine backup system. The laptop had been automatically backing up to a cloud drive for months, and she had never turned it off. Inside was a complete history of her edits, versions, iterations. A digital paper trail showing the evolution of her deception. Original inputs from our old podcast episodes. Text prompts she had written and refined. Export attempts with different emotional settings. Error logs when the AI failed to generate convincing audio. Success logs when it finally produced something usable. There was even a PDF file titled custodyprep.docs. It contained talking points, emotional strategies, timeline, planning, ... Stay calm during testimony. Do not overact when playing audio. Focus on protecting Jake rather than attacking Matt. And one note, in bold text, that made my blood run cold. If he brings up AI, deny all knowledge. Play victim. Judges hate tech jargon and will side with the simpler explanation. I stared at that line for a long time. She had anticipated my defense. She had planned for the possibility that I would figure out what she had done, and had prepared countermeasures. This was not a crime of passion or a desperate mistake. This was premeditated character assassination. She did not just want custody of our son. She wanted to erase the version of me that Jake loved and replace it with a monster of her own creation. We filed a motion to vacate the original emergency ruling based on newly discovered evidence of fraud. Dr. Grant submitted her full forensic report. I submitted screen recordings of the MacBook folder contents, time machine backup logs showing the history of edits, and the custody prep document with its damning strategic notes. The judge approved an emergency evidentiary hearing to be scheduled within 2 weeks. This was unusual. Family court judges are typically conservative about reopening cases, but the technical evidence was too compelling to ignore. Lauren tried to block the hearing. Her lawyer filed objections claiming fabrication, revenge hacking, and violation of privacy. They argued that I had illegally accessed her computer and that any evidence found should be inadmissible. But the laptop was registered in my name, purchased with my credit card, and used in our shared home. Legally, I had every right to examine its contents. The court ordered a digital integrity specialist to audit the laptop under supervised chain of custody to verify that nothing had been planted or altered. 2 weeks later, we got the results. The laptop in question contains clear evidence of AI-generated voice cloning used to fabricate threatening voicemails. Metadata confirms project creation, predates alleged incidents by several weeks. Source files are verified as authentic and unmodified. We walked back into court, and this time, I brought my real voice with me. The courtroom was different this time. Smaller somehow, despite being the same room. Lauren did not look confident. She looked small and tired. She wore beige instead of white. No makeup. Her lawyer avoided eye contact the whole time, shuffling papers and checking his phone. The judge, the same one who had suspended my visitation weeks earlier, opened. We are here to revisit the authenticity of audio files previously I submitted as evidence in this custody. Matt. Dr. Grant took the stand. Calm, professional, surgical in her precision. She explained voice synthesis technology in terms a lay audience could understand. She talked about how cloned voices lack biometric markers, the unique micro-pauses and breath patterns that make each human voice distinct. Then she played 2 clips side by side. One was me speaking naturally at Jake's school talent show, recorded on my phone just months before the separation. The other was the alleged voicemail, where I supposedly threatened to ruin Lauren's life. You hear that click? She asked the courtroom. That is algorithmic artifacting. A digital signature left by the AI model. His real voice does not do that. Lauren's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled around the edge of the table, knuckles white with tension. I watched her realize that her perfect plan was unraveling in real time. The judge requested clarity. Can you prove these recordings were artificially generated? Dr. Grant nodded. I can, and I will. She walked the court through the synthesize _mat.py script found on the MacBook. She matched the export file hashes to the voicemail files submitted as evidence. She showed the editing timeline via time machine backups, demonstrating how the audio had been created, refined, and exported over several weeks. Finally, she opened the custody prep document and read the line that had haunted me. If he brings up AI, deny knowledge. Play victim. Judges hate tech jargon. The courtroom fell silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a moment. This was not just evidence tampering. This was premeditated fraud with a strategy for covering up the deception. Lauren's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge denied it. I have heard enough to understand the scope of this matter. Then he looked directly at me. Mr. Reynolds, you may address the court. I stood on unsteady legs. I never threatened anyone, but I was threatened with losing my son forever based on a voice that was not mine, saying words I never spoke. Lauren broke like a dam bursting. I only did it because he was winning, she shouted, her composure finally cracking completely. Because everyone always believes the calm ones, the responsible ones, the ones who never lose their temper. Her lawyer tried to stop her, reaching for her arm, but it was too late. The words poured out like water through a broken pipe. You do not know what it is like to be invisible in your own house. He fixed every light bulb before I even noticed it was broken. He remembered every school event, every doctor appointment, every little detail that makes someone look like the perfect parent. The judge cut her off. That is not how truth works, Mrs. Reynolds. She burst into tears. Not the controlled, strategic kind she had used during the original hearing. The raw, messy kind that come when the mask finally slips and the person underneath is exposed. The kind that comes when you realize you have destroyed everything good in your life for the sake of winning a game that did not need to be played. I felt no satisfaction watching her fall apart. Just sadness for what we had lost and relief that the truth was finally visible. The judge's ruling came swift and decisive. The court finds the prior audio submissions to be falsified digital fabrications created with malicious intent to mislead this court and deprive a father of his parental rights. Emergency custody is transferred to Mr. Reynolds effective immediately. Mrs. Reynolds is placed on supervised visitation, pending psychological evaluation and completion of mandatory counseling. Furthermore, this court is referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of possible criminal charges, including perjury, evidence tampering, and fraud. Her lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear, but she did not respond. She just sat there, not crying anymore, just hollow, as if the version of her that had orchestrated this elaborate deception had already left the room. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that the truth had won, anger at what she had put us through, sadness for the marriage we had lost, and the trust that could never be rebuilt. But mostly, I felt eager to see my son again. I picked Jake up from school that same afternoon. The same school where Lauren taught, where teachers whispered and stared as I walked down the hallway to his classroom. He did not run to me. He did not cry. He just looked at me with wide, searching eyes that seemed too old for his 6-year-old face. Mom said you yelled at her a lot. Is that true? I knelt down to his level, meeting his gaze directly. I never yelled at your mom, but I got very sad and very tired after I lost my job. And I made the mistake of not telling you when that happened. He nodded seriously, processing this information. Did you make the scary message on the phone? I shook my head. No, buddy. But someone made it sound like I did. He was quiet for a long moment, then asked the question that mattered most. Can we go home now? Home de nuit. Such a simple word, but it meant everything. Home meant bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes and building Lego spaceships that could travel to Mars. Yes, I said. We can go home. That night, Jake fell asleep in my arms while we watched The Iron Giant, his favorite movie. He had insisted on it, saying he wanted to watch something where the good guy wins. During the quiet final scene, he whispered something that broke me in the best possible way. I knew it was not you. I blinked back tears. How did you know? Because when you get mad, your voice gets soft. Not scary. That simple observation from a 6-year-old demolished me. He did not need expert witnesses or metadata analysis or spectral frequency charts. He just knew me. The real me. The one no AI could perfectly replicate because it had never learned the subtle ways love changes a voice. The artificial intelligence could copy my words, my tone, my cadence. But it could not copy the way my voice softens when I talk to my son. The way it fills with patience when he asks the same question for the 10th time. The way it carries love in frequencies no machine could measure. That night, I recorded myself reading him a bedtime story, just like we used to do, just to have proof of what my real voice sounds like when it is full of love instead of artificial rage. Lauren's carefully constructed life collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. The court records were supposed to be sealed, but somehow the transcripts leaked to local media. They loved the headline, "Modern Mom Uses AI to Frame Ex-Husband in Custody Battle." The story had everything. Technology, family drama, A twist ending where the victim becomes the hero. Her employer, the school district, quietly placed her on administrative leave pending their own investigation. Parents started asking questions about the art teacher who had lied in court. Her gym friends stopped inviting her to workout sessions. Even her parents, the ones who had always defended her choices, told her to lay low for a while. She moved out of state within a month. No goodbye to Jake. No letter explaining her actions. No apology for the trauma she had caused. Just vanished, like the fake version of me she had tried to make real. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. Just sadness for the person she had been before fear and jealousy turned her into someone capable of such elaborate deception. Jake asked about her sometimes. I told him that sometimes people make bad choices when they are scared, but that does not mean they stop loving us. I did not know if that was true, but it seemed like the right thing to tell a 6-year-old trying to make sense of why his mother had disappeared. Dr. Sarah Fields, our new family therapist, was refreshingly direct in her assessment. You were digitally erased, she told me during our first session. Not just from the legal system, but from your own life story. Someone used technology to overwrite your identity with their preferred narrative. Then she looked at Jake, who was building with therapy room blocks in the corner. And you were taught to fear a version of your father that never existed. It took 6 sessions before Jake would even say Lauren's name out loud. At first, he called her the lady with the stories. He would draw pictures of himself alone in a room with boarded-up windows, or sometimes he would draw me with wings, carrying him away from dark clouds. But week by week, session by session, the drawings changed. The boards came off the windows. He started drawing trees and sunshine again. He drew pictures of us building Lego spaceships together, playing catch in the backyard, reading books on the couch. Dr. Fields explained that children are remarkably resilient, but they need truth to heal. No more secrets, no more protecting him from age-appropriate reality. Just honest answers to honest questions. The forensic technicians sent me a comprehensive report on the AI tools Lauren had used. The irony was not lost on me. They were not even sophisticated. Oh gal. Sophisticated. Sophisticated. Cheap software, some of it cracked versions downloaded from questionable websites. Basic tutorials ripped from Reddit forums and YouTube videos. But the damage had not come from the quality of the technology. It had come from context, from the willingness of people to believe what they expected to hear. The voice matched their preconceptions about unstable fathers and protective mothers. So they accepted it without question. We presented our case at a technology ethics seminar 6 months later. I did not play the actual fake recordings out of respect for Jake's privacy. But the story was compelling enough on its own. The audience of lawyers, judges, and tech professionals was riveted. They asked if I had forgiven Lauren. I said, I did not know yet. Forgiveness seemed like a luxury I could not afford while I was still rebuilding the version of myself she had tried to overwrite. The seminar led to changes in family court procedures. New guidelines for verifying digital evidence. Mandatory forensic analysis for audio and video submissions in custody cases. My nightmare had become a cautionary tale that might protect other families. For Jake's 7th birthday, we recorded a podcast together. Just the two of us, talking about his favorite animals and rating different dinosaurs on their coolness factor. He giggled when I tried to pronounce axolotl and corrected my mispronunciation of Pachycephalosaurus. I left in every stumble, every pause, every burst of laughter. This was what real voices sound like. Imperfect, human, alive. We uploaded it to a private folder labeled Real Voices Only. Sometimes when Jake feels anxious about the past or worried about the future, he plays it before bed. His favorite part is when I say no matter what happens, my voice is always here, and it will always tell you the truth. That became our way of fighting back against the artificial. With authentic moments, recorded and preserved. With truth that could be verified not by metadata or spectral analysis, but by the love carried in every syllable. 6 months later, we had a follow-up hearing to determine permanent custody arrangements. Lauren showed up with a new lawyer and a dramatically different appearance. Her hair was darker, shorter. She wore glasses and a conservative gray suit that made her look like a completely different person. She asked for supervised visitation rights. I am in therapy, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Real therapy this time. I am learning what I did and why I did it. The judge turned to me for my response. I said I was open to supervised visits for Jake's sake, but only under strict conditions. No recording devices of any kind. No phones during visits. No voice memos. No hidden microphones. No digital footprints of any kind. Just presence. Just eye contact. Just silence. If that was all she could offer, honestly. She nodded, and for the first time in months, the gesture seemed genuine rather than calculated. The judge approved a limited visitation schedule. 2 hours every other Saturday, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. Lauren would have to complete 6 months of therapy and demonstrate stable housing before any changes could be considered. Now we live simply. No custody battles, no forensic reports, no lawyers calling during dinner. Just me and Jake figuring out how to be a family of 2. He is learning piano, practicing scales with the kind of patience I never had at his age. Sometimes he plays just one note over and over again, listening for the difference between loud and soft, harsh, and gentle. I wonder if he is training his ear to distinguish between authentic and artificial, between truth and simulation, between voices that carry love and voices that carry deception. He tells me I snore too loudly. I tell him he talks in his sleep about dinosaurs and spaceships. We laugh about these imperfect human sounds that no AI could replicate because they come from dreams and exhaustion and the simple fact of being alive. Most nights, before he falls asleep, he whispers, "I still like your voice best." And that is enough. Well, that is more than enough. Sometimes I think about the voice Lauren created, that digital ghost that nearly destroyed our family. It sounded like me, but it carried none of the love that makes a voice truly human. It was technically perfect, but emotionally hollow. The real victory was not proving her fraud in court. It was hearing my son say he knew the difference all along. It was learning that love leaves traces in a voice that no algorithm can fake and no deception can erase. We are building new memories now, Jake and I. Recorded not in digital files, but in the shared experience of being present for each other. In bedtime stories and morning conversations and the thousand small moments that make up a real relationship between a father and son. And every day, I am grateful that truth has a voice of its own, and that love makes it impossible to fake.